Children of the Black Goat. Chapter 8. The Mountain of Bone and Iron. The mountain did not want to be climbed. It wasn't just the steepness of the slope, nor the razor-sharp volcanic scree that sliced into their boots. It was the will of the place. The wind blew downward, a constant, invisible hand trying to push them back to the beach. Silas didn't push back. He leaned into it. "Breathe," he instructed Elin, his voice tight. "Step where I step. Don't look down." They were 300 feet up the slope, scrambling over a ridge of blackened basalt. Below them, the beach had become a staging ground for an invasion. The 5 ironclad ships had beached themselves on the black sand like beached whales. Their ramps dropped with heavy, metallic clangs. And out poured the Iron Inquisition. They didn't look like the soldiers at the bridge. These were purifiers clad in heavy, steam-assisted plate armor. Pistons hissed on their legs as they marched. They carried flamethrowers, heavy tanks of alchemical fire strapped to their backs. But worse were the striders. Walking machines. Iron tripods 10 feet tall, piloted by monks sitting in open cages. They moved with a jerky, insectoid rhythm, stepping over the giant fossilized ribs on the beach. Thump. Thump. "They are fast," Elin whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "They move like spiders." "Machines don't get tired," Silas said, grabbing her hand to haul her up a ledge. "But they don't know the terrain." "We do." "We don't know the terrain, Uncle." "We know the spirit of it," Silas corrected. "The golem said iron is a weed. We stick to the roots. The machines will slip on the rock." A horn blew from the beach. A deep, mechanical sound that shook the dust from the cliffs. A squad of 5 soldiers spotted them. They pointed up the ridge. Whoosh! A stream of liquid fire shot from a flamethrower. It fell short, splashing against the cliff face 50 feet below them, but the heat washed over Silas's face. "They aren't climbing," Silas realized. "They are burning a path." "Run." They scrambled up a narrow goat trail, or perhaps a trail made by something much older than a goat. The vegetation here was thick, thorny vines and massive, prehistoric ferns that blocked their way. Normally this would be an obstacle. But for Elin it was a highway. As she ran, her hands brushed the thorns. "Open," she gasped. The vines didn't just move, they snapped back like coiled springs, clearing a path for them. And the moment Silas passed, the vines lashed back together, weaving a wall of thorns behind them. "Good girl," Silas panted. "Keep closing the door." They reached a small plateau halfway up the mountain. Silas stopped, bending over, hands on his knees, his chest heaving. His old injury was screaming, a white-hot agony in his leg. "Uncle?" Elin looked at him with worry. "Just a second," Silas wheezed. Crash. The trees to their left splintered. An iron strider burst through the foliage. It had climbed the sheer rock face, its metal claws digging into the stone. The pilot, a masked monk, saw them. He pulled a lever. The machine's arm, a rotating saw blade, spun up with a shriek. Heretic found. The pilot's voice was amplified by a brass horn. "Targeting." Silas drew his sword. It looked pathetic against the ton of iron and steam looming over them. "Go, Elin." Silas roared. "Get to the top." "No." The machine stepped forward. The saw blade descended. Silas rolled. The blade sparked against the rock where he had stood, carving a deep gash in the stone. Silas lunged. He swung his sword at the machine's leg. Clang. The steel bounced off the iron plating. The shock vibrated up Silas's arm, numbing his fingers. "Futile," the pilot droned. The machine raised a second arm, a steam vent. Hisses. A cloud of superheated steam blasted Silas. He screamed, falling back, his skin blistering. He scrambled backward, blind and burning. The machine loomed over him for the kill. "Stop." Elin didn't run. She stood between Silas and the machine. She didn't have a weapon. She had the seed, the heart of the mangrove. She held it up. "Iron is a weed," Elin shouted, her voice echoing with the authority of the black goat. She didn't throw the seed. She slammed it into the dirt at the machine's feet. "Grow." The effect was instantaneous and violent. The seed didn't sprout a flower. It exploded into a massive, thick root. The root erupted from the earth like a breaching whale. It wrapped around the iron strider's leg. The pilot yanked his levers. Malfunction. Terrain instability. The root tightened. It wasn't just wood, it was nature's muscle. It squeezed. Crunch. The iron leg of the machine buckled. The metal shrieked as it was crushed like tin foil. The machine toppled. It fell sideways, crashing heavily into the plateau. The boiler on its back ruptured. Boom. Steam and gears flew everywhere. The pilot was thrown clear, unconscious. Silence returned to the plateau, broken only by the hissing of the broken machine. Silas stared. The root that had destroyed the machine was already withering, its energy spent in that one violent burst. The seed was gone. You used it, Silas rasped, climbing to his feet, ignoring his burns. The second chance. You used it. I used it to save my first chance, Elin said, running to him. She touched his burned face. Her hands were cool. Are you okay? I smell like boiled ham, Silas grunted, forcing a smile. But I'm walking. He looked down at the wreckage. That was one, he said grimly. There are 50 more down there. And now they know exactly where we are. He looked up at the peak. The origin was still 1,000 feet up. A storm of unnatural colors was swirling around the summit, the void leaking into the world. We can't fight them all, Silas said. We have to be faster. He sheathed his sword. He picked Elin up, putting her on his back. Hold on tight, kid. I'm going to run. And I'm not stopping until my heart explodes or we reach the top. You're hurt, Elin whispered into his ear. Pain is just information, Silas quoted an old drill sergeant. And right now the information says, move. He began to climb. Below them, the forest began to burn as the Inquisition unleashed their flamethrowers, trying to kill the mountain itself to get to the girl. The race for the end of the world had begun. The air at the summit did not smell of smoke or iron. It smelled of ozone, crushed petals, and starlight. Silas collapsed the moment the ground leveled out. His lungs were burning like bellows pumping broken glass. His leg, scalded by the steam vent of the machine below, throbbed with a wet, blistering heat. He rolled onto his back, staring up at the sky. Here, at the peak of the origin, the sky was not blue. It was a swirling aurora of impossible colors, violet, gold, and a deep, vibrating teal. The barrier between the world of men and the void was thin here. So thin you could almost hear the stars humming. We made it, Silas wheezed, his hand groping blindly for his sword hilt, a reflex that never died. Uncle, Elin's voice was soft, filled with a wonder that erased her fear. Look. Silas forced himself to sit up. He looked. They were in a crater. But it wasn't a pit of ash. It was a sanctuary. The center of the crater was dominated by a tree. But to call it a tree was an insult. It was a titan. Its trunk was thick as a castle tower, made of fossilized obsidian that shimmered like black glass. Its branches didn't just reach up. They curved outward and down, creating a dome, a ribcage of wood that sheltered the entire crater. And the leaves were made of light. They drifted down slowly, dissolving before they hit the ground, feeding the soil with pure energy. The black goat, Silas whispered, crossing himself with a trembling hand. It wasn't a goat, but he saw where the legend came from. The two massive, lowest branches of the tree curved horizontally before hooking upward, creating a silhouette against the aurora that looked exactly like the horns of a colossal ram. It was a case of pareidolia, men seeing monsters where there was only majesty. It's not a monster, Elin said, walking toward the tree. The grass beneath her feet was lush, vibrant, and alien. It's a mother. Elin, wait. Silas tried to stand, but his leg gave way. He gritted his teeth, suppressing a groan. Elin stopped. She didn't run to the magic tree. She turned back to him. She walked back and knelt beside the old soldier. She saw the burns on his leg, the blood soaking his tunic, the exhaustion etched into every line of his face. You are broken, she whispered. I'm fine, Silas lied, the habit dying hard. Go. Do what you need to do. The Iron Men, they'll be here soon. They can wait, Elin said. She placed her hands on his burnt leg. What are you doing? I don't have the seed anymore, Elin said, her black eyes reflecting the aurora above. But I am in the garden. And in the garden, nothing hurts. She closed her eyes. She didn't chant. She didn't cast a spell. She simply asked. She asked the soil to lend her strength. She asked the light leaves to share their warmth. Silas gasped. The pain didn't vanish instantly. It was replaced by a cool, soothing sensation, like wading into a river on a hot day. He watched, stunned, as the angry red blisters on his skin began to fade. The torn flesh knitted together. It wasn't miraculous healing. It was accelerated life. You should save your strength, Silas said weakly, though he didn't pull away. You'll need it for the Inquisition. Helping you is not a waste. Elin opened her eyes. She smiled, a tired but genuine smile. You carried me up the mountain, uncle. I can carry your pain for a moment. Silas felt a lump in his throat that had nothing to do with thirst. He reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "You're a good kid, Elin. Better than this world deserves." "The world is fine." Elin stood up, helping him to his feet. "It's just the people who are confused." They walked together toward the Obsidian Tree. As they approached the trunk, the air pressure dropped. The silence became absolute. Sitting at the base of the tree, nestled between the roots like a child in a lap, was a figure. Was a skeleton. It wasn't human. It was larger, the bones elongated and elegant. It wore robes that had not rotted, woven from the same silver fibers as the tree's bark. In its lap, it held a staff made of white wood. The last gardener, Silas realized. He died guarding this. "No," Elin said. "He didn't die. He finished." She walked up to the skeleton. She didn't touch the bones. She touched the tree behind it. The vibration was so strong it rattled Silas's teeth. The tree woke up. It didn't move. It didn't speak with a voice. It spoke with memory. Silas fell to his knees as a vision flooded his mind. He wasn't seeing it with his eyes. He was remembering it as if he had lived it. He saw the world before the cities. He saw the forest covering the continents. He saw the void not as an enemy but as the night sky, a necessary darkness to define the light. He saw the first men coming with fire and axes. He saw the gardeners retreating, hiding the seeds, turning themselves into trees to preserve the life force. And he saw the truth of the black goat. The goat was the Earth's immune system. It was the force that broke down dead things so new things could grow. It was the rot that fed the rose. The church feared it because they wanted eternal stasis. They wanted stone that never crumbled. But without rot there is no life. The vision faded. Silas gasped back in the present. Elin was still touching the tree. She was glowing. Not the blue of the void, but a vibrant, verdant green. "I see," she whispered. "I understand." "What?" Silas asked. "What is it?" "The void isn't leaking," Elin said, turning to him. "It's breathing. The tree, it breathes the void in and breathes life out. It's a filter." She looked at the skeleton. "But the filter is clogged. The gardener died. There is no one to prune the branches. No one to guide the flow. That's why the storms are coming. That's why the shadows are hungry." She looked at her own hands. "It needs a new gardener." Silas felt a cold chill that had nothing to do with the wind. "No," he said. "No, Elin. I know that look. That's the look of a soldier jumping on a grenade." "If I don't do it," Elin said calmly, "the pressure will build. The void will burst through. The whole world will become like the shadow mine." "So what? You touch the tree and, what? You turn into wood? You sit here for 1,000 years until you become a skeleton?" Silas grabbed her shoulders. "I didn't carry you halfway across the world to watch you turn into a statue." "I won't be a statue," Elin said. "I will be the forest. I will be everywhere." "You won't be Elin," Silas shouted. His voice cracked. "You won't be the girl who likes white bread. You won't be the girl who saved a fox. You'll just be a god. And gods are lonely, Elin." Elin looked at him. Her eyes were swimming with tears. "But if I don't, the Iron Men will burn it all. They are climbing, Uncle. I can feel them." Thump, thump, thump. As if on cue, the sound of mechanical heavy steps echoed over the ridge of the crater. Silas spun around. The invasion force had reached the summit. Over the lip of the crater, 3 iron striders pulled themselves up. Their saw blades spun with a hungry whine. Behind them, a phalanx of inquisitors in heavy plate armor marched into the sanctuary, their flamethrowers primed. And leading them was a man in gold armor. High Inquisitor Kroll. He held a megaphone. "Behold!" Kroll bellowed, his voice destroying the sanctity of the garden. "The root of all evil. The demon tree." He pointed his mace at Elin. "And the witch who seeks to wake it. Burn them. Burn it all to ash." The soldiers advanced. The striders revved their engines. Silas drew his sword. It was just a piece of steel against an army of steam and magic. He was tired. He was one man. But he stepped between the army and the girl. "Elin," Silas said, his voice low and steady, "don't touch the tree yet. Uncle, there are too many." "I know," Silas smiled. It was the same feral grin he had worn in the storm. "But I'm not a rock anymore, kid. I'm the water." He looked at the strange, glowing fruit hanging from the lower branches of the obsidian tree. "Those fruits?" Silas asked. "They are full of life energy, right?" "Yes. Concentrated life. Too strong for humans. If you eat one you'll burn out." "Perfect," Silas muttered. He reached up and ripped a glowing fruit from the branch. It pulsed in his hand like a second heart. "What are you doing?" Elin screamed. "I'm buying time," Silas said. "You find another way. You find a way to save the world without killing yourself. Because if you die, Elin, then this world isn't worth saving." Silas bit into the fruit. Juice ran down his chin. It tasted of fire and honey. The energy hit him. It didn't heal him. It overcharged him. His veins turned glowing green. His eyes burned with white light. The fatigue vanished, replaced by a power that felt like it would tear his muscles apart from the inside. He felt the strength of 100 men. "Stay back, Elin," Silas roared. His voice wasn't human. It sounded like an earthquake. He turned to the Iron Army. "You want to burn the forest?" Silas laughed and green smoke poured from his mouth. "Come and try." He charged. He didn't run. He blurred. He hit the first Iron Strider. He didn't use his sword. He punched the metal leg with his bare hand. Crunch. The iron shattered like glass. The 10-ton machine flew backward, crashing into the squad of soldiers. Silas stood amidst the wreckage, glowing, burning, dying. "I am the shield," he bellowed. Behind him, Elin watched in horror and awe. She saw Silas burning his own life force to hold back the tide. She realized he was right. Sacrifice wasn't the only way. There had to be a way to use the power without losing the self. She looked at the skeleton of the previous gardener. He had died because he was alone. He had borne the weight of the world by himself until he broke. "I'm not alone," Elin thought. She turned to the tree. She didn't try to become it. She placed both hands on the bark. "Wake up," she commanded the tree. "Not to take me, but to fight with me." The ground shook. The roots of the Obsidian Tree began to unearth themselves. The summit of the origin had become a crucible of light and noise. On one side, the Iron Inquisition advanced, a wall of steam, fire, and steel. The Striders stomped forward, their saw blades screaming, tearing up the ancient earth. On the other side stood Silas. He was no longer a man. He was an avatar of pure, kinetic force. The life fruit coursing through his veins had turned his skin into a map of glowing green veins. Smoke poured from his mouth with every ragged breath. He didn't fight with technique. He fought like a landslide. He grabbed the leg of an Iron Strider. The metal was hot enough to melt skin, but Silas didn't feel it. He roared, muscles tearing and reknitting instantly, and he heaved. The 10-ton machine tipped. It crashed into the phalanx of soldiers, scattering them like bowling pins. "Heretic!" High Inquisitor Kroll screamed from atop the ridge. "Abomination! Bring him down!" A dozen flamethrowers turned on Silas. Streams of liquid alchemical fire bathed him. Silas howled. The fire burned his clothes away, charred his skin, but the green light underneath pushed back. He was burning and healing at the same time, trapped in a cycle of infinite agony. "I am the shield," Silas bellowed, charging through the fire. He tackled a group of soldiers, throwing them aside with the force of a battering ram. But there were too many. For every machine he broke, 2 more climbed the ridge. He was slowing down. The fruit's energy was finite. He could feel his heart stuttering, beating so fast it was vibrating. "I bought you time, Elin," Silas thought, his vision blurring into a tunnel of green and red. "Do something." Behind him, at the base of the Obsidian Tree, Elin was not watching the battle. She was listening to the roots. Her hands were pressed against the black bark. She didn't try to control the tree. She didn't treat it like a weapon. "They are hurting you," Elin whispered to the tree. "They are burning your skin." The tree shuddered. Pain, the vibration echoed in her bones. "Iron bites." "Then push them back," Elin said. "Don't be a statue. Be a garden." She closed her eyes and poured every ounce of her will into the tree. She didn't use the void to destroy, she used it to connect. She connected the Obsidian Tree to the roots of the fossilized giants. She connected it to the moss on the rocks. She connected it to the very air of the summit. Crack boom. The sound was louder than any cannon. The ground beneath the Inquisition's army erupted. It wasn't an earthquake. It was a harvest. Massive roots, thick as castle walls, burst from the black sand. They didn't strike like whips, they rose like waves. An Iron Strider raised its saw blade to strike Silas. Suddenly, a root surged up, wrapping around the machine's arm. It didn't crush the metal. It grew into it, would fused with steel. Vines accelerated their growth 1,000 times over, driving into the gears, the pistons, the steam vents. The machine groaned. The saw blade stopped, choked by ivy that grew in seconds. "What sorcery is this?" Kroll yelled, backing away as a fern the size of a carriage unfurled in front of him, blocking his path. It's not sorcery, Elin's voice rang out. It wasn't a shout, but the acoustics of the crater amplified it, making it sound like the wind itself was speaking. It's spring. The battlefield transformed. The flamethrowers sputtered and died as moss grew over their nozzles, clogging the mechanisms. Swords rusted into dust in seconds as rapid oxidation spores filled the air. The soldiers of the Inquisition found themselves trapped, not by bars but by flowers. Beautiful, terrifying purple flowers that wrapped around their boots and refused to let go. They weren't being killed. They were being planted. Silas fell to his knees. The green fire in his veins was fading, leaving him hollowed out. He watched as the obsidian tree bloomed. The black branches turned silver. Leaves of pure light exploded outward, creating a canopy that shielded the entire crater. The void scar in the sky above began to swirl. It was reacting to the tree. The tree was acting as a needle, stitching the wound and reality closed. Kroll, seeing his army incapacitated by foliage, drew his own weapon, a mace that glowed with a holy, white light. "I will not let the darkness win," Kroll roared. He wasn't attacking Elin. He was attacking the tree. He charged at the trunk, intending to smash the bark to break the connection. No. Silas tried to stand, but his legs were dead. Kroll raised the mace. But he never swung it. The golem, the ancient gardener they had met on the beach, stepped out from behind the tree. It had climbed the mountain. It caught the mace with one stone hand. No. Pruning. Today, the golem rumbled. It snatched the mace from Kroll's hand and crushed it into dust. Then, with a gentle flick of its finger, it pushed Kroll backward. The High Inquisitor flew into a patch of thick, soft moss. Vines instantly wrapped around him, pinning him to the ground, safe but immobile. The battle was over. The machines were silent, turned into statues of rust and vine. The soldiers were trapped. Silence returned to the peak. Silas coughed. Black blood splattered onto the glowing grass. The energy was gone. The crash was hitting him. His heart felt like a bird fluttering against a cage. "Uncle." Elin ran to him. She looked different. Her hair was floating slightly as if she were underwater. Her skin glowed with a faint luminescence. She knelt beside him. "You're cold," she whispered, touching his hand. "Spent," Silas wheezed. The fruit took a heavy toll. He looked at his hand. It was gray, withered. He looked like an old man on his deathbed. "I saved you," Silas smiled, his teeth stained with blood. "I did my job." "The job isn't done," Elin said fiercely. You promised to be the shield." She looked at the tree. Then she looked at Silas. "The tree doesn't need all this life," she said. "It has too much." She placed her hand on the tree root next to them, and her other hand on Silas's chest. "Flow," she commanded. She acted as a bridge. She siphoned the excess energy from the awakening tree, the energy that was stitching the sky, and poured a fraction of it into Silas. It didn't make him young again. It didn't make him a Superman. It just gave him back what he had lost. Silas gasped. Color returned to his face. His heart steadied to a strong, slow rhythm. The withered skin filled out. He wasn't healed of his scars. His knee still ached. But he wasn't dying. "Enough." Silas grabbed her hand, breaking the connection. "Don't drain the tree for me." "It has plenty," Elin smiled, wiping tears from her eyes. She stood up and looked at the prisoners. Hundreds of Inquisition soldiers were trapped in the vegetation. They looked terrified. They expected to be eaten or sacrificed to a demon. Elin walked to the center of the crater. She looked at Kroll, who was struggling against the vines. "You came to kill a monster," Elin said. Her voice was calm, echoing the authority of the ancient gardeners. "You are a witch," Kroll spat. "You will destroy the world." "Look around you," Elin gestured to the blooming crater. "Is this destruction?" Kroll looked. He saw the flowers. He saw the light. He saw that his men were unharmed, just immobilized. "You brought machines to a garden," Elin said. "You brought fire to a library. That is why you lost." She turned to the golem. "Let them go." The golem rumbled a protest. "They? Oh, return?" "Let them go," Elin repeated. "But keep their iron." The vines loosened. The soldiers fell to the ground. "Leave," Elin commanded. "Leave your armor. Leave your weapons. Go back to your ships and tell your bishop what you saw." "Tell him that the black goat is not a demon," Elin said, her eyes flashing. "Tell him. The earth has woken up. And it wants to be left alone." The soldiers looked at Kroll. Kroll looked at Elin. He saw the power she held. He saw that she could have buried them all in seconds. He stood up, stripped of his mace and his dignity. "This isn't over, witch," Kroll hissed. "No." Silas stood up beside Elin. He leaned on his sword, looking like a battered king of the ruins. "But this fight is—" "Run along, little tin men, before the gardener changes his mind." The golem took a step forward. That was enough. The Inquisition broke. They scrambled down the mountain, leaving their expensive striders and armor behind to be swallowed by the moss. Sunset came to the origin. The sky was no longer a wound. It was a normal twilight purple. The void scar was sealed, or at least, covered by the canopy of the great tree. Silas sat by a fire, a normal fire this time. Elin sat beside him. "You let them go," Silas said. "They will come back with a bigger army." "Maybe," Elin said. "But they will remember. They will remember that we didn't kill them." "Mercy is a seed too?" Silas asked. "The hardest one to grow," Elin nodded. She looked at the tree. "I have to stay here, uncle," she said softly. Silas froze. "What?" "Not forever," she added quickly. "But for a while. The tree, it needs a teacher. It needs to learn how to be a filter again. I need to stabilize it." "You mean, live here? On this rock?" "It's a garden now," Elin corrected. "And the golem is here. And the river folk will come. Jory said he would smuggle supplies." Silas looked at the solitary peak. It was safe now. The magic of the tree would protect it. It was a fortress of nature. "And what about me?" Silas asked. His voice was quiet. Elin took his hand. "You are the shield," she said. "A shield doesn't stay in the garden. A shield goes where the danger is." She looked at the horizon, toward the distant mainland. "There are others, uncle. Other children like me. Hidden in the cities. Hiding in the dark. The church will hunt them harder now." Silas understood. His mission wasn't over. It had just expanded. He wasn't just Elin's guardian anymore. He was the guardian of the lost. "You want me to find them," Silas said. "Bring them here. Create a sanctuary," Elin smiled. "A place where the broken pieces fit together." Silas stood up. He looked at his sword. It was chipped, the blade stained. But it was still sharp. He looked at Elin. She wasn't the scared child in the burlap sack anymore. She was a queen of the wild. "All right," Silas said. "I'll find them. I'll bring them home." He bent down and kissed her forehead. "You keep the door open, kid. I'll go find the guests." "Be safe, Silas," she whispered. "Safe is boring," Silas grinned, the old mercenary humor returning. "I'll be effective." Epilogue. The needle cut through the waves, heading back toward the mainland. Silas sat at the tiller. He was alone, but the boat didn't feel empty. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out the mirror shard Elin had given him. He looked at his reflection. He saw the scars. He saw the gray beard. But he didn't see a killer. He saw a man with a purpose. He looked at the reflection of the sky behind him. The stars were coming out. "Time to go into the dark," Silas whispered to the wind. He adjusted the sail, catching the night breeze. Behind him, on the horizon, the peak of the origin glowed with a soft, green light, a lighthouse for all the lost things in the world. And in the silence of the ocean, the old soldier began to hum a tune. Not a war song. A lullaby.